Oh.
Hello.
All right.
Yeah, we're coming back to you, my friend.
Once again.
Will the mysteries never end?
Never end.
The mysteries are coming back to you, my friend. Like a succubus on the wind. It's Mystery Mondays.
On a Monday.
Yeah, it's Mystery Mondays.
After Tuesday.
Yeah, it's Mystery Mondays. Yeah, the mysteries are coming for you.
Once again.
Yeah, the mysteries are coming for you. Once again. Yeah, the mysteries are coming to you.
Once again.
Mystery Mondays is coming for you.
That's right, my friend.
Coming for your sweet ass, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
It is Mystery Mondays once again. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling extra
Mysterious.
Extra smart as well.
Yeah, well, you know, we had a corporate board meeting
Yes.
this morning, so I didn't have time to change, you see. So I'm just rocking the tie, rocking the suit this afternoon. Out of my civvies, for once, out of my civvies. But we hope you're having a nice sensual Monday out there, whatever you're doing. It is Bullwinkle's turn to bring us a mystery today. So I'm looking forward to this Bullwinkle. As always, we don't know what the mystery's going to be. Well, apart from Bullwinkle, obviously. It would suck a little bit if he didn't know what the mystery was going to be. We would just all be sat in here in silence. But, Bullwinkle, are you ready to take it away?
I was born ready for this.
Drew, are you ready?
I's ready.
Me, are you ready? Yes.
Have we got any
Are you ready
mysterious
out there,
music
baby?
in the background as well? Can we get some mysterious, tunes?
Bullwinkle.
Oh.
Bullwinkle.
Oh, there we go. Now I'm feeling mysterious.
Does he even have to ask? You know?
Now I'm feeling mysterious.
Right, let's take 5 seconds, maybe even 10. Maybe even 10. To change our mental attitude from that of jovial stupor to ethereal, ghostly
By God.
wonder. Mysteries. Who knows the mysteries of the universe? Do you? Does Bullwinkle?
Do I? Let's find out.
Let's find out with our mystery of today.
So last time that I did a mystery, it was when you were away, and I covered Jack the Ripper. So I thought I'd stay on brand this week, and I'm going to be covering Spring-Heeled Jack.
Oh, I know all about Spring-Heeled Jack, mate. This is a well good one.
Yeah.
This is a well good one.
I don't know anything.
I was
about
definitely going to do him if nobody else
Springfield
did.
Yeah, man.
Springfield Jack.
Yeah.
So, Springfield Jack is an entity in English folklore of the Victorian era. The first claimed sighting of the Spring-Heeled Jack was in 1837. Later sightings were reported all over the United Kingdom and were especially prevalent in suburban London, the Midlands, and Scotland. There are many theories about the nature and identity of Spring-Heeled Jack. The urban legend was very popular in its time, due to the tales of his bizarre appearance and ability to make extraordinarily large leaps, to the point that he became the topic of several works of fiction. I think he had like comic books and stuff made about him as well, didn't he?
Wow.
Did he say leaps?
Yeah.
So
So he would leap from
jump.
people's roofs. So people in Victorian times, especially in London, would report that they'd just be like sat in their bed in the middle of the
Fiddler
night,
on the roof.
and they would hear like, you know, like so what sounded like running across their rooftops, and then they'd like run to their window, and then they'd just see someone like jumping from their roof onto somebody else's, but it'd be like 30 foot or something.
The originator of parkour.
Yeah,
Exactly. Spring-Heeled Jack was described by people who claim to have seen him as having a terrifying and frightful appearance, with diabolical physiognomy.
I think that basically he looked a little bit like some of the depictions of the devil.
Yeah, it says that he's got clawed hands and eyes that resembled red balls of fire. One report claimed that beneath a black cloak, he wore a helmet and tight-fitting white garment like an oilskin. Many stories also mention a devil-like aspect. Others said that he was tall and thin, with the appearance of a gentleman. Several reports mention that he could breathe out blue and white flames and that he wore sharp metallic claws at his fingertips. At least 2 people claimed that he was also able to speak comprehensible English.
Hello, my good sir.
Yes. So we'll go to the early sightings now. So, in the early 19th century, there were reports of ghosts that stalked the streets of London. These human-like figures were described as pale. It was believed that they stalked and preyed on lone pedestrians. The stories told of these figures formed part of a distinct ghost tradition in London, which some writers have argued formed the foundation of the later legend of Springfield Jack. Spring-heeled Jack, sorry.
Sorry,
you got it in my head.
That's like a
I'm calling him Springfield Jack.
Yeah, that's like an
now.
episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah. The most important of these early entities was the Hammersmith ghost, which in 1803 and 1804 was reported in Hammersmith on the western fringes of London. It would later appear in 1824. Another apparition, the Southampton ghost, was also reported as assaulting individuals at night. This particular spirit bore many of the characteristics of Spring-heeled Jack and was reported as jumping over houses and being over 10 feet tall, which is about 3
Big
meters
old boy.
tall.
Man, that's ridiculously tall.
Imagine just walking through like 18th century London or 17th century. How does it work? 18th century? 19th century,
18th
there we
and
go.
19th.
Yeah, and just seeing this 10-foot man jumping over buildings. Terrifying. The first alleged sightings of Spring-heeled Jack were made in London in 1837, and the last reported sighting is said in most of secondary literature to have been made in Liverpool in 1904. According to much later accounts, in October 1837, a girl by the name of Mary Stevens was walking up to Lavender Hill, where she was working as a servant after visiting her parents in Battersea. On her way through Clapham Common, a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alley. After immobilising her with the tight grip of his arms, he began to kiss her face, while ripping her clothes and touching her flesh with his claws, which were, according to her deposition, cold and clammy as those of a corpse. In panic, the girl screamed, making the attacker quickly flee from the scene. The commotion brought several residents who immediately launched a search for the aggressor, but he could not be found. So I think that was the first sighting of Spring-heeled Jack. The next day, the leaping character is said to have chosen a very different victim near Mary Stevens' home, inaugurating a method that would reappear in later reports. He jumped in the way of a passing carriage, causing the coachman to lose control, crash, and severely injure himself. Several witnesses claimed that he escaped by jumping over a 9-foot-high wall whilst cackling in a high-pitched ringing laughter.
Yeah. That's pretty good. Pretty good.
Gradually, the news of the strange character spread, and soon the press and the public gave him the name of Spring-heeled Jack. The mayor was also made to give out an official response at this point. He read out an anonymous letter that he had received with details of Spring-heeled Jack attacks, and although he seemed fairly sceptical, members of the audience were able to confirm that many people claimed to have had interactions with the spirit and would not recover. For example, one writer said several young women in Hammersmith had been frightened into dangerous fits, and some severely wounded by a sort of claws that the miscreant wore on his hands. Another correspondent claimed that in Stockwell, Brixton, Camberwell and Vauxhall, several people had died of fright and others had had dangerous fits too. So we'll go on to perhaps the most well-known cases now, which is the Alsop and Scales case. These are probably the best known of the alleged incidents involving Spring-heeled Jack, and were the attacks of 2 teenage girls, Lucy Scales and Jane Alsop. The Alsop report was widely covered by the newspapers, including a piece in the Times, while fewer reports appeared in relation to the attack on Scales. The press coverage of these two attacks helped to raise the profile of Spring-Heeled Jack. Jane Alsop reported that on the night of the 19th of February 1838, she answered the door of her father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer, who told her to bring a light, claiming that he had caught Spring-Heeled Jack here in the lane. She brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment that she handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and presented a most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue and white flame from his mouth, while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. Miss Alsop reported that he wore a large helmet and that his clothing, which appeared to be very tight-fitting, resembled white oilskin. So I guess this is sort of where they get that image of him that I was talking about earlier. Without saying a word, he caught hold of her and began tearing her gown with his claws, which she was certain were of some sort of metallic substance. She screamed for help and managed to get away from him and ran towards the house. He caught her on the steps and tore her neck and her arms with his claws. Ooh. She was rescued by one of her sisters, after which her assailant fled.
So the sister saw her as well?
I assume so, yeah. And then he sort of fled after, probably jumping over high walls and cackling again. On the 28th of February 1838, 9 days after the attack of Miss Alsop, 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were returning home after visiting her brother, a butcher, who lived in a respectable part of Limehouse. Miss Scales stated in her deposition to the police that as she and her sister were passing along Green Dragon Alley, they observed a person standing in an angle of the passage. She was walking in front of her sister at the time, and just as she came up to the person, who was wearing a large cloak, he spurted a quantity of blue flame in her face, which deprived her of her sight, and so alarmed her. Then she was instantly dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits which continued for several hours. They did actually, I read this bit but I didn't write it down, that they actually arrested someone on suspicion of the Alsop case. However, they let him go. He would have probably been convicted of slicing her neck or whatever. But they let her go because she was so convinced that he was spitting blue and white flames, and he was like saying, "I can't do that. No one can do that." And she was so convinced that he was spitting blue and white flames that
she didn't want the man to be convicted.
No, she was genuinely convinced that this man could spit blue and white flames. But because obviously he couldn't, they just couldn't arrest him because it didn't fit the profile.
I guess he could have just been lying.
Yeah.
I can't do that, honestly.
I can imagine, how people do that thing where they put alcohol in their mouth and just go. Could have been something like that, that he would just do that to startle people.
Almost like a magician's trick, essentially.
Kind of dressed a bit like a magician as well. A white shirt and a big black cloak.
And the metallic thing, you could have had metallic claws, almost like cutlets.
Yeah.
So what they call cutlets?
Just put them on your fingers. And
or gloves, you know what I mean? Like these kind of sharp gloves and stuff.
Yeah.
Her brother added that on the evening of question, he had heard the loud screams of one of her sisters moments after they had left his house, and on running up Green Dragon Alley, he found his sister Lucy on the ground in a fit, with her sister attempting to hold and support her. She was taken home, and then he learned from his other sister what had happened. She described Lucy's assailant as being tall, thin, and gentlemanly appearance. Covered in a large cloak and carrying a small lamp or bullseye lantern similar to those used by the police, which kind of fits what we were saying about the other case where he gave her a lantern. The individual did not speak, nor did he try to lay hands on them, but instead walked away quickly. Every effort was made by the police to discover the author of these and similar outrages, and several persons were questioned but were set free. After this, the Times reported on Spring-Heeled Jack, and he became a phenomenon. Over time, sightings grew further apart, but they did still arise a lot of times all the way through to 1904. He was even linked with being a potential culprit for the Devil's Hoofprints.
Wow.
Like we were saying the other day about that.
Yeah. The cases do remind me of each other just because there's like similar time period and just like a bit of like a devilish aspect. You know what I mean? Like obviously like the whole thing is like, is it the devil's footprints and Spring Hill Jack obviously being a bit demonic.
Yeah,
and
he was rumoured
devilish.
to have been like moving all over England. So I guess that's why they sort of linked him with that. And he even had a later counterpart called Perek, the Spring Man in Prague.
There you go.
So we'll get onto some of the theories now. So no one was ever caught and identified as Spring Hill Jack. Combined with the extraordinary abilities attributed to him and the very long period during which he was reportedly at large, this has led to numerous and varied theories of his nature and identity. While several researchers seek a normal explanation for the events, other authors explore the more fantastic details of the story to propose different kinds of paranormal speculation. Other researchers believe that some individuals may have been behind its origins, being followed by imitators later on. Spring Hill Jack was widely considered to not be a supernatural creature, but rather one or more persons with a macabre sense of humour. This idea matches the contents of the letter to the Lord Mayor, who accused a group of young aristocrats as the culprits, after an irresponsible wager. A popular rumour circulating as early as 1840 pointed to an Irish nobleman, the Marquess of Waterford, as the main suspect, having suggested this may have been due to him previously having bad experiences with women and police officers. But like you were saying, they sort of attributed a lot of what happened to the sort of, blowing flames that could be explained. But obviously the only bit that can't really be explained is jumping like 10 feet in the sky. The Marquess was frequently in the news in the late 1830s for drunken brawling, brutal jokes and vandalism, and was said to do anything for a bet. His irregular behaviour and his contempt for women earned him the title the Mad Marquis. And it is known that he was in London area by the time the first incidents took place. In 1880, he was named as the perpetrator by E. Cobham Brewer, who said that the Marquess used to amuse himself by springing on travellers unaware to frighten them, and from time to time others have followed his silly example. In 1842, the Marquess married and settled in Curragmore House, County Waterford, and reportedly led an exemplary life before he died in a riding accident in 1859. Doesn't really seem like the sort of bloke who would be running about slashing people's necks and jumping over buildings. Yeah. A variety of wildly speculative paranormal explanations have been proposed to explain the origin of Spring Hill Jack, including that he was an extraterrestrial entity with a non-human appearance and features, for example retro-reflective red eyes or phosphorus breath, and a superhuman agility deriving from life on a high-gravity world, with his jumping ability and strange behaviour, and that he was a demon accidentally or purposefully summoned into this world by practitioners of the occult.
Whoa.
Or who made himself manifest simply to create spiritual turmoil.
Whoa.
Fortean authors, particularly Lauren Coleman and Jerome Clark, list Spring Hill Jack in a category named phantom attackers, with another well-known example being the Mad Gasser of Mattoon. Typical phantom attackers appear to be human and may be perceived as prosaic criminals, but may display extraordinary abilities, as in Spring Hill Jack's jumps, which it's widely noticed, of course, that if any human did do this, like could jump that high, it would just break their ankles. So like, there's no way anyone could. Well, apart from the fact you also couldn't just jump over a building.
Yeah.
Victims commonly experience the attack in their bedrooms, homes, or other seemingly secure enclosures. They may report being pinned or paralysed, or on the other hand, described a siege in which they fought off a persistent intruder or intruders. Many reports can readily be explained by psychology, most notably the old hag phenomenon that we talked about before, recorded in folklore and recognised by psychologists as a form of hallucination or sleep paralysis. In the most problematic cases, an attack is witnessed by several people and substanted. What's that word? Substanted.
Let's have a look.
Substanted. You know what? Substanted. We'll go with that by some physical evidence. But the attacker.
Substantiated?
That's the one. Substantiated. That's the one.
Yeah, as soon as evidence came in, you knew.
But can't actually exist. Some other people as well thought that it was just a huge case of mass hysteria.
Yeah.
I know we spoke about in Pandora's Box the other week about how the dancing plague that went around.
That's my favourite,
Yeah, that's crazy one, that, isn't it? Yeah.
And people think that this could be a similar thing where once you hear that there's this random like guy jumping over buildings and
it just
slashing
catches
people's necks, then they just believe in it as well.
Oh, like the woman that cut off her husband's penis.
Yeah.
And then suddenly just like loads of women start cutting off men's penises.
Started a trend.
Yeah, it's like weird things. It's like things get into your conscious or your subconscious, and then suddenly it just seems to happen all the time, doesn't it? Or do you know what it's even a little bit like? Just along the same sort of in the same vein. You know, if you ever like watch a movie or you watch something, and then everywhere you go, you see stuff which is related to that. And it's like it's just because your mind's looking out for stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I remember once going through a little phase where I played a game about witches. And then for the next like week or two, pretty much everything I did had some connection to witches. I remember being real creeped out by it. Like, I'm being followed by the witches.
Yeah, man, the witches are coming for you, Bullwinkle.
Just shows how the power of the brain.
They're gonna make a potion out of your balls.
Yeah, as your golden nuggets.
yeah, your golden nugs.
That's all the information I've got on Spring Hill Jack anyway. So,
it's crazy how he targeted women, I reckon. You know, he was definitely a jack.
Yeah.
He was definitely like a bloke.
A Jack the lad.
A Jack the lad.
I know they said that he targets like police as well. That's like one of the things he was targeting.
Weird that they always used to call things like that Jack. Spring Hill Jack, Jack the Ripper. Do you know what I mean? All
Jack
like,
the lad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, what is it about the
Jack
name
of all
Jack?
trades.
all like, you know, all related.
Yeah.
You know?
Jack Black.
Jack Black, yeah, that's one.
Jack White.
So what do you guys think happened anyway? What do you guys think?
I think it was a
Spring Hill
man.
Jack was.
I don't know how to explain the jumping. Like, I don't know whether that was just a
hysteria,
bit
like blowing things out of proportion.
Yeah, just like, you know, he was real good at parkour, could run across like people's roofs and like jump pretty high. But and then I think it was a man that was getting off on it, and with like girls and that, and maybe had like some like what are they called, gauntlets? Some, like, gauntlets
some gauntletty type gloves.
Yeah, that were a bit like, you know. And
what did you call them earlier? Cutlets.
Cutlets, yeah.
Like a cutlet, like a little lamb cutlet.
That's what I said at first, wasn't it? No, what was that? Isn't there a sword like a cutlet as well?
A cutlass.
Cutlass.
That's what pirates used. Yeah, cutlasses. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boyka knows that because he loves Pirates of the Caribbean.
I do. I actually nearly got a pirate story up for today.
Oh, really?
I'll do that next time.
Yeah,
but
man.
Yeah.
Long John Silver.
yeah. I think it is probably just probably was a dude, was a chap, and he was probably like very good at what is today known as parkour. But let's face it, if you took somebody that was really good at parkour, right, and then if you'd never seen that before, it is like they are extremely talented.
Yeah,
so if you had a guy that was
so impressive.
Yeah, if you had a guy that was a bit like that
and burn flames in people's faces and stuff as well.
Yeah, maybe like a bit of a magician, bit of a parkourer. Mix it with the fact that he's dressed a bit creepy. You know, it's going to seem very supernatural, especially because it's all happening almost in the dead of night when things just seem more eerie and creepy. Anyway, I know that if I was just chilling in bed and it was all quiet and I heard like footsteps across my roof and I saw like some dark figure in like a cloak jumping off, like you are almost like naturally inclined to think
Phantom!
Like, that is not of this world.
Yeah.
But then you're like, wait, let's calm down. Especially because back in those days, they were just much more God-fearing and supernaturally minded people, you know. So yeah, most likely some weird fella. But it's interesting yet again. It's like a lot of the things that we talk about on Mystery Mondays. That what's compelling is that we will most likely, like 99%. We just never know, you know. So. Anyway, any more of you want to add? Any more of you? Any more of anybody else in there? No? All right. Well, that was Mystery Mondays. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And that was the mystery of Spring Hill Jack. Cheers for that, Bullwinkle. We'll see you again next week.